Right, my friends, I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. And we've got some serious business to attend to. It is Wednesday, and I am trying to figure out what's going on here with one of my screens. This is a little bit frustrating, but all right, it's going to work. And it looks like the tubes are alive and well. And so we can go ahead and get started, and let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I'm a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun, deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about some testimony. We have a couple cases that we're keeping our eye on. One of them, of course, is the Proud Boys trial. We wrapped that up yesterday. We're waiting for a verdict. There were some filings that we will get into when we get a little bit further down the road and see if we get close to a verdict. But it's been pretty quiet today, which you can expect because we just finished with closing arguments yesterday. The jury has 5 different co-defendants and a bunch of different charges to work their way through. So it's going to be mostly quiet here on the Proud Boys case today. But of course, if we hear anything or if you hear anything, let us know. If there's, we're kind of on verdict watch. So you know how verdict watch is. If something happens, boom, we kind of got to go jump to it and see what the situation is. So we'll keep our eye on that as we work our way through the week and into next. And then, of course, we have got day 2 of the Trump trial. This is a civil trial with really criminal allegations. I mean, there's no way to beat around it, but they couldn't prosecute him criminally. They extended the capability to bring a claim, and Miss Carroll did that, and she testified today. And so today we are going to be really spending our time at this mind map. And if you want to follow along at home, you can just go to spotlightlawyer.com/Trump, and that will take you over to this mind map, which is a real library of all the various Trump prosecutions that are going on. And so you can follow along at home. You can sign up for a free account using the same software if you'd like. But just to close some of this up, we have Letitia James. She's investigating him. We have the New York investigation. We have the Georgia investigation. And we have the special counsel investigation. So all of those are working their way through. Really, New York has already been charged, so we can move that over. But if you are following along at home, up here is where we have the state prosecution from Alvin Bragg and Donald Trump. And so below that is where we have a whole separate case. And so today, this is where we're going to be spending our time talking about this civil lawsuit. And it's in the case of E. Jean Carroll versus Donald Trump. And you can see we've got a lot to talk about. Exactly who is on the plaintiff's side, the lawyers representing the case, the founder, and we heard from 2 different witnesses, Cheryl L. Beal today, who was the apparent department store manager who was there when all of this happened back in the 1990s, 1995 or 1996. We don't know exactly when, neither does E. Jean Carroll. But Cheryl testified and Carroll testified, and she, of course, is the alleged victim of this 1995 department store assault. So we'll go through all of that. We also have some preliminary issues to attend to, which involves some Trump tweets. And this judge was not happy about this. And I actually am concerned about this on behalf of Donald Trump, because I think that the DOJ will not play around with this. They're looking for any reason they possibly can to charge him. And he posted some tweets, and the judge is implying that those tweets may be curious for the Department of Justice. And I'm not even kidding about that. So we'll go through this here. We have the trial thread brought to us courtesy of Inner City Press. And then we have Donald Trump's defense team. A couple lawyers stood out today. Joe Tacopina and Chad Siegel, of course, were there on behalf of the former president. So we're going to go through this whole deal. If you want to follow along at home, it's spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. And you can grab that link in the YouTube chat, or just type it right into your browser. But before we get into all of this, my friends, of course, we have to be properly nutrified and fortified and energized, the good kind, with green energy, courtesy of our friends at Field of Greens. And Field of Greens, as we know, we would all, just like to lose some extra leftover pandemic pounds. Let's not beat around that bush. But how sick are you of all the ads for weight loss pills and fad diets? You've been there, you've done that, we've all seen them. They just don't work. But you know what does? eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. It's easy, and you do that and the weight would probably just fall right off. But look, vegetables, not a fan, I get it. Who's got time to prepare that every day? Instead, you don't have to worry about it. Field of Greens is the solution. It's a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables you're not going to find in any other product because proper nutrition reboots your metabolism like a computer, and you can burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. There's no reason to wait. Go over to fieldofgreens.com, open up a new tab, open up a new browser, plug it right into your phone when you're watching this. Fieldofgreens.com. And don't forget to use code Robert when you check out. They've got stuff for weight in addition to Field of Greens. They've got stuff for flexibility. They have pre-exercise stuff. They've got sleep stuff. Very good. Fieldofgreens.com. And don't forget to use code Robert at checkout. The vegetables want to be eaten, and it is real organic superfood that will give you bursting green energy. All right, and so let's get right into the meat and potatoes on the day. Trump trial, day 2. This is the civil case brought by E. Jean Carroll against Donald Trump. This is a claim alleging that in 1995, a long time ago, Donald Trump did a thing in a dressing room with E. Jean Carroll. And somehow, all of a sudden, back in the 2019 era, when Donald Trump was a president, this entire claim got reinvigorated. And something happened. They filed a lawsuit, and Donald Trump has been prosecuted in this civil claim ever since. And the case is now in trial. Yesterday on the program, we talked about day 1, jury selection, and we had opening arguments as well. We know the jury in this case is made up of 6 men and 3 women. And today we are on day 2 of this trial. We're going to hear from E. Jean Carroll herself, along with this woman, Cheryl L. Beal, the department store manager back in 1995. Now, there were some preliminary issues that we're going to take a look at that Judge Kaplan resolved. We're going to go through the trial thread from our friend Matthew Russell Lee at Inner City Press, and we're going to refresh our recollection about who founded or funded this entire litigation. Many people are pointing to this guy, Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. But before we go through those preliminary issues, let's familiarize ourselves with this judge. This is an old photo of Judge Lewis Kaplan. Federal judges typically don't like to share too many photos on the social medias. And so we don't really have more recent photos. We have another photo of him down here that somebody snapped. He's probably very angry with this photographer, as you can see. Oh, you son of a, is what he's saying. That's the you son of a face. You know, he's walking into court. He thought he dodged everybody and they snapped him. So, all right. Anyways, that's what he looks like. Now, a little bit more about him from Wikipedia. We have a baseline. We know that he's been in office for quite some time out of the Southern District of New York. And we have heard his name before because we've talked about some of the other cases where he was a judge. And he was appointed originally by Bill Clinton. And where did he go to school? Harvard. Ugh, figures. He was nominated by Bill Clinton, confirmed by the Senate in 1994. Whew. He's presided over some pretty important cases. You've heard of them. Guantanamo, federal racketeering cases involving that Gambino crime family, Chevron versus Donziger, major environmental case. And Donziger was held in contempt, the largest contempt sanction in U.S. history. And if you look into that case, that's another bizarre case. And he's been around for a long time. Now, one of the other cases that he may stand out from is this one, Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew. We covered a lot of that here when we were going over the GM Jeffrey Epstein case. So he has been around for a very long time, and he's going to be the person presiding over this lawsuit and this jury trial. And so let's talk about some of the preliminary issues before we get into the trial thread. Remember, one of the big points of contention when this trial was moving forward was whether or not Donald Trump and his defense team can talk about the fact that this guy, Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, was funding this entire claim, right? This lawsuit's been going on for a long time. Lawsuits are expensive. You don't just get a bunch of lawyers to work for free, believe me. So somebody was paying for this litigation for a long time. They need expert witnesses, they need transcripts, they need depositions, they need all sorts of things. And they were doing depositions and they were doing research and all this writing and filing this and filing that and so on. It was going on for a long time. But this was a contingency case. And in contingency cases, we know that typically the client doesn't pay for anything. They only get paid when you win. There's a settlement. They take a portion of the settlement. The lawyers take a portion of the settlement. And then the whole thing is resolved. But that's not what happened here. In this case, somebody was funding some of the litigation costs. And that person was Reid Hoffman. Now, the reason this was a problem is because the defense, Trump's team, wants to argue that this was biasing or prejudicing the litigation. In other words, maybe if these people who were funding the whole thing were partisan hacks, maybe the case, if they weren't partisan hacks, maybe this case would have never come to fruition at all. Maybe E. Jean Carroll wouldn't have been motivated enough, incentivized enough to bring the claim. But she was encouraged to do so by certain people. And in this recent disclosure, we saw that back during the deposition, E. Jean Carroll had originally said, "Is anyone else paying for your legal fees, Miss Carroll?" You see, she wrote here, "No, nobody is. Nobody's paying for it." Turns out that's not true. So the defense, the plaintiff's team sent a letter over to Alina Abba and said, "We write to provide supplemental information. Hey, guess what? Is anyone else paying for your legal fees?" When she told you that the answer was no on that, the answer was in fact, yes, somebody else is paying our legal fees. And Alina Abba later disclosed to us that it was in fact Reid Hoffman. And we know Reid Hoffman is the founder of two other organizations. These organizations, like America Future Republic, have been built and funded with tens of millions of dollars to stop Republicans, to go after Trump and Trump acolytes. So that has been the pretext for this entire litigation. And the question is, can we talk about that? Can we tell the jury about this? Can we tell them that Reid Hoffman and George Conaway, the former husband to Kellyanne Conway, they all colluded and created this little cabal to go find a very favorable plaintiff and take that plaintiff and make Trump's life living hell through endless litigation in multiple places around the court, also known as lawfare? Would that be appropriate to tell the jury about that? That Conway set the whole thing up? Hopefully, we're going to see what the judge rules on that here in a short minute. But there was another couple issues that we need to get into. Donald Trump posted some tweets bright and early this morning at 5:51 and then 6:10. And this came up in the middle of trial. And I'm telling you, the judge is not happy about this. And these judges are not going to play around with Donald Trump. And it's going to get worse very quickly, especially with this judge. And they're just salivating. I think they're trying to bait him into doing this. And we'll see how close to the line he wants to play this. But it's getting close. Now, before we get to those tweets, there was another interesting story that came out first in the trial proceedings. And it was about this story about mock juries. Using this process in law where you can have trial juries, okay, and I don't mean actually like in the middle of a trial, but mock juries, just like you might have a mock trial. And actually, you here on this channel, remember that I think maybe 2 years ago, I forget when it was, I flew back to Austin. I was there for a 7-day DUI CLE continuing legal education, and I was there studying all of the equipment at the lab that they use to do gas chromatography and mass spectrometry. And when we were there, a big portion, a full day of our training was about using mock juries, bringing in these panels and asking them questions, presenting evidence, trying your opening and closing arguments and all the things. And we actually did it, right? We actually presented and worked on our cross exams and then brought in a full panel of play jurors and said, "What do you guys think about this?" And we went through the whole thing. So this is just something that you do, right? This is not an uncommon thing. But what is uncommon is that she's leaking this material out, that she's detailing her cases, or the allegation is that this attorney who is doing these mock jury trials and testing these jurors is communicating this out to the media. And so now the media is becoming a big part of this trial. Let's see what the story says. From the Daily Mail, there is an exclusive. They say, Donald Trump's bravado made the jury snicker. Now, this is just a test trial, not an actual trial. It was secretly staged by E. Jean Carroll's lawyer. They had 27 jurors, and they had them all hear the real evidence, including the former president's tape deposition. And their verdict is in. And so they say that lawyers for the author, E. Jean Carroll, who say that she was Ard in the Bergdorf, in the Manhattan Hotel, they staged a test trial in a Manhattan hotel to determine how their upcoming civil case will play out. And they did this after 6 hours of testimony. They had 27 mock jurors. They were separated into 3 groups. 2 out of the 3 found Trump guilty. The day-long spectacle featured videotape deposition and interviews from both Trump and Carroll, as well as 2 friends she spoke with in the immediate aftermath. So they are doing trial. They're practicing, right? They're giving it a run. They're saying, let me see how this works. And if the jurors don't like it, if they don't like your theme, if they don't like your message, they're going to obviously talk to the jurors in the 3rd group and say, why did you find him not guilty? What was the reason? What was your problem with it? And they say, oh, well, this thing was our problem. And you say, well, we're going to fix that right now. So it's actually a very smart thing to do. And defense attorneys do this too. The day-long spectacle featured videotape deposition. The lawyers also presented text messages and emails that Trump's defense team is expected to present to try to undermine her credibility. So they're going to try to respond to that. And that was the whole point of this, they said. They're trying to figure out if she has a solid case. And so you see there are some other photographs there. But the point is, that is something, the question, how did this story come about? Who told the Daily Mail about that? Did E. Jean Carroll's lawyers tell them about that? Or did one of these maybe 27, quote, jurors who was just testing this tell the media about it? So now we're going to have a big fight over the media. Who's telling the media? Who can say what? If the plaintiff's team, E. Jean Carroll and her team, are leaking to the media and saying things outside the confines of this trial, why should Donald Trump be penalized if he does the same thing? He's just being honest about it. He's just posting stuff on his Truth Social. She's leaking it to the Daily Mail. It's not that much different. Trump's just being honest. He just shares it openly. So that's going to come into play in a short minute. But we also have to take a look at these tweets, because these tweets are going to be the subject of some serious contention, and Trump is going to be urged to be warned by the judge. So 2 things happened bright and early this morning. At 8:51 a.m. Eastern Time, 5:51 my time, Trump posted this on Truth Social. He said the E. Jean Carroll case, Miss Bergdorf Goodman, calling her that, is a made-up scam. Her lawyer is a political operative, financed by a big political donor that they said didn't exist, only to get caught lying about that. Just look at her CNN interview before and after the commercial break, like a different person. She said that there was a dress using the old Monica Lewinsky stuff. Then she didn't want to produce it. The dress should be allowed to be a part of the case. This is a fraudulent and false story, he says. Witch hunt. So he posted that at 5:51 a.m. my time, so 8:51 a.m. Eastern. Now that is before traditionally the trial starts, right? Trial starts at 9 a.m. We'll see. So he posted that before. But then there was another post. This one came shortly after 9 a.m. at 6:10 a.m., 9 a.m. Eastern, Trump time. So presumably we're now past the initial opening tweets, and Trump posts this. They got caught lying. The Miss Bergdorf Goodman case is financed by a big political donor that they tried to hide. Does anybody believe that I would take a then almost 60-year-old woman that I didn't know from the front door of a very crowded department store, with me being very well known, to put it mildly, into a tiny dressing room and ... her? She didn't scream. There are no witnesses? Nobody saw this? She never made a police complaint? If I was seen there with a woman, there would have been big press. Scam is what he says. So he posted that at 9:10. Now there was another Trump family member who also posted something, which was Eric Trump. Now I don't know what time he posted this because this tweet was, I believe, ultimately deleted because he also got called out in court by the judge. Here's what he said. Zoom out. Jean Carroll's legal battle against my father is allegedly being funded by political activist Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn. A civil lawsuit being funded by a billionaire with no direct involvement in the case out of pure hatred, spite, and fear of a formidable candidate is an embarrassment to our country and should be illegal and tells you everything you need to know about the case at hand. So all of those posts were dropped on the truth, and the judge is going to have some comments about it. So now that we have all of that background out of the way, let's remind ourselves who is representing Donald Trump. These two individuals, Joe Tacopina, you may remember him from the Alvin Bragg prosecution, as well as Chad Siegel, another lawyer, I believe, with Joe Tacopina's firm, who are both representing Donald Trump. And of course, if you want to follow along at any of this, you can go to spotlightlawyer.com/Trump and you can access this mind map. And I already see there are some people in here. Hello, hello, hello. And so feel free to browse around as we go to it. But now we have the actual trial thread, courtesy of our friend Matthew at Inner City Press. And he is on Twitter at Inner City Press. He's also on Substack, somebody who does great reporting from the Southern District of New York. He's there. Day 2. He tells us, before the jury is brought in, Judge Kaplan takes the bench. All rise. Please be seated. He says, all right, before we get started here today, Mr. Tacopina, it has come to my attention that your client, this is Trump's lawyer, Mr. Tacopina, your client, Donald, is speaking to his public about things that he's not supposed to speak about. And Trump's lawyer, Tacopina, he says, well, Your Honor, he's speaking about the case, and Miss Kaplan's office also is speaking about this case. In fact, she leaked to the media that she held 2 mock juries and that they found liability for the president. And so if she is going to be communicating to the media about her opinions on this case, my client should be allowed to do it too. And he says, by the way, I'm not saying that Miss Kaplan herself leaked that, just to be clear, but someone from that wall did, somebody over there did in that panel. And the judge says, well, Mr. Tacopina, it could have been somebody else. It could have been someone off the street, who was paid to give an opinion. Somebody may have been a juror and gone in there and said, wow, I just sat for a Trump trial. I got to call somebody in the media. Could have been them. And Tacopina says, well, I've read the article, Judge, the one that we just read. And Kaplan says, I have too. There were 37 people there. It could have been any one of them who talked to the media. So just because one of them are talking to the media doesn't mean that your client gets to talk to the media. So Tacopina says, all right, Your Honor, look, I'll speak to my client, Donald Trump, the former president, current presidential candidate, by the way. I'll speak to my client about the post today. I assure you, Your Honor, I'll talk to him, okay? But just to be clear, they have done it too, right? They've been speaking about this case. There was a protective order that was not signed or executed. And he says, I'm going to ask Trump not to comment on the case. Something. Judge issues a stern warning to Donald Trump. And this is a serious warning. Your client may be tampering with a new source of potential liability. And I think you know what I mean. And I think Inner City Press is asking about contempt of court. And I think that is probably just the beginning. I think they might want to charge him with a new crime like obstruction or jury tampering or interference with, there's a million different statutes in that category. some sort of actual interference with an ongoing case and make a criminal charge out of that. And they would be thrilled to do it. So this needs to be on high alert. I'm really hopeful that this doesn't continue to spiral out of control. The judge says, anything else? Carroll's lawyer sounding happy. Of course, she's gleeful. She knows. Nothing from us, Your Honor. So the first witness comes in, and her name is Cheryl Beale. So E. Jean Carroll's lawyers, they say, okay, we're ready, Your Honor. Jury is seated. Ladies and gentlemen, you know this is how it all works. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. First witness. Your Honor, we call Cheryl L. Beale to the stand. Miss Beale, what is your current job? I'm the vice president of a cosmetics company. Before that, I worked at Prada and Louis Vuitton and a bunch of other places. You know, all the fancy places. Thank you for that. Now, let's turn our attention. I want to focus on the spring of 1996. Where were you at the time? Bergdorf Goodman. Exactly where I was. 57th Avenue and 5th Avenue, New York. What was your job then? I was the manager of the women's store department, and I ran all the different things that happen in a women's store. And how busy would it get, Miss Beale, on a Thursday evening? Well, it's pretty busy. I mean, especially if we had an event. Sometimes there's a lot going on. It's New York, after all. Otherwise, it was pretty quiet. The plaintiff's lawyer puts up a chart on the screen. Seems like it's probably a floor plan. She said, what is this right here? FR? What is this? Those are the fitting rooms. And right next to those are the dressing rooms. And where would the swimwear be? Since you remember from 1995, where would it be? It moved. You know, it was a swing shop. It was seasonal. So stuff moved around all the time. And Miss Beale, were the fitting rooms sometimes open? She says, yeah, we wished they were, but sometimes sales associates tied them open with ribbons. Could two people fit inside one of those fitting rooms? She says, yeah, of course. Yeah, people shop together. They go in there. You know, they look at each other. What do you think? How does this fit? Come in here and we'll do the thing. I imagine, imagine that's what these women are doing. Two people go in there, you can change these things out. Now, Miss Beale, did famous people shop there then? She says, yeah, one of my favorites was Pierce Brosnan, 007. And how were famous people treated there? They were given privacy. We didn't like hearing them. I just saw this famous football guy with a second person. Had you ever seen Donald Trump come through the store? Yeah, I saw him there. He came back on the 57th Street. Did you ever hear of Donald Trump going into your store in Bergdorf's? Objection, she rephrases. You were in the store a lot, yeah. And if people came into the store who were celebrities, would you hear about them? Yeah. And if Donald Trump came in, for example, would you have been alerted to Donald Trump? Store manager says, no, not necessarily. I mean, if he was president, sure, there'd be Secret Service and stuff. But otherwise, no, I wouldn't know that he was there. Carroll's lawyer says no further questions. Okay. So this is interesting. We have a department store manager who's brought out as a witness who doesn't really talk about Donald Trump at all. Just tells us about the fitting room. Two people can fit inside. All right. Sometimes we wish they were open, but a sales associate tied them open with ribbons. I'm not real sure what that was about. But we don't even get her placing or seeing or knowing anything about Donald Trump at all. And in fact, if Donald Trump had walked into the store, she wouldn't have even really been made aware of it. Okay. So now we turn over to cross-examination. Judge says, all right, defense. Trump's lawyer gets up. Says Miss Department Store Manager, given the proximity from the fitting room right here on this floor plan to the main area over here, if somebody screamed, would they be heard? Could you hear them here? If they screamed? Yeah, you'd be able to hear them. And if someone's head, and the judge says, if a tree falls in the forest and cuts him off, and he says, okay, I got my answer, Your Honor, I'll move on. He says, I know you did, but you know where I'm coming from. Trump's lawyer says, did you maintain the footage from the security cameras here, Miss Department Store Manager? She says, sure, yeah. Could a person get it? I assume so. Did you have guards in your store? We had security executives who might take a pass through the store, just walking around. And if a person had a security concern, they could be approached. Somebody could go up to them if they had a problem. The judge says, were they in uniform? The judge asks a question. Were they in uniform? And she says, presumably, yeah, they could. And that, yeah, they worked at the front desk. And Trump's lawyer says, thanks. He continues. So, Miss Department Store, you were contacted by the plaintiff's lawyers to testify. They reached out to you to tell you to come here. Yeah. But when we reached out to you to talk to you, you refused to talk to us. Is that true? And she says, well, these investigators, they came unannounced. I told them I was at my place of business and they just showed up and they started, I said, hey, this is where I work. And they just showed up. But were you called yesterday and you hung up? Somebody called you yesterday and you hung up on them? And she says, yeah, at 8:30 a.m. somebody called. He says, no further questions. Right, great. So, all right. So this witness doesn't place Trump there, wouldn't know if Trump came in or out, says there were security guards, there was a front desk, there were cameras. Somebody could have gotten the cameras if they wanted to. There were other people who would have been receptive of any screams or security problems throughout the building. She was there. She didn't testify that she ever heard anything. She didn't testify that she ever even knew that Trump even came through the vicinity at all. But she's their first witness. All right. So we're back now. And they bring out somebody else. E. Jean Carroll, the alleged victim of this crime back then, which is now turned into a civil claim. And a photograph of her is being shown to the jury. Photograph of E. Jean Carroll. Probably because, age can kind of take a toll on some people, especially when they're dishonest and being used by the dark side. But a prior photograph of her is going to make her look a little bit more, let's say, attractive to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has said, I would never, this is ridiculous. What kind of a person do you think I am, And then they place this photo up there and you see, she's kind of a babe, kind of Trump's type after all. So they show a photo up there and they say, thanks for being here, E. Jean Carroll. We know how traumatic this is for you. I'm sure that's not in writing here, but I'm just presuming that is how this is going. And she's sitting here like, yeah, just the total victim of a crime from 30 years ago. Miss Carroll, when did you graduate? She said, 1967, after I returned a library book. Okay. And what did you want to do after you graduated? Miss Carroll, I wanted to be a writer. First, I worked for Procter & Gamble or P&G or something. And I started my career. Did you get married after graduation? Well, 3 or 4 years later. Can't remember. Has a hard time with dates. And I married Steve, and he became an editor of Outdoor Life. And so we went to Montana together. but we split up back in 1980 or 1981. She's really bad with dates. And I think this is probably intentional because she can't even remember when this original ordeal happened. You know, if you don't know when it happened, kind of makes it hard to defend it. If you have a 2-year window when Donald Trump randomly walked in and did a thing, it's really hard to disprove that because maybe he did go into Bergdorf's one time. But if you say it happened on April 5th, 1995, and I know it because I wrote it down, I told somebody about it, I sent a letter, I did something to memorialize it. One good way to memorialize it, you know, call the police, report it anywhere. But if you don't know that date, you can't defend it. Because if you do know the date on April 5th, 1995, then Donald Trump could say, I wasn't there. I was in these meetings. Here's my calendar. Here's some corroborating evidence to show that that is not accurate. So every time we talk about dates here, look at this. When did you get married to Steve? Well, was it 3 years or was it 4 years? Which one? We split up in 1980 or 1981. Which one is it? You should know some of these dates after a successful companionship and marriage. Then where did you move after that, Gene? Back to Manhattan. Yeah, I went and wrote for magazines there. Places like Esquire and Playboy and Rolling Stone and Vanity Fair and the New Yorker and the Atlantic. Did you write for Elle? It was the Thinking Women's Fashion magazine. I started a column there called the Ask E. Gene column. Do you have a TV show? Yeah, I did. It was the idea of Roger Ailes. We went on to create Fox News. E. Gene Carroll went on to create Fox News? We did? Okay. Was he your boss at the time? That's news to me. Maybe she did. I didn't know. It's news to me. Was he your boss at the time? She said yes. He had his own show. It was called Straightforward at 8 p.m. and he interviewed celebrities. Did you see Mr. Ailes' set? Yeah, he had 2 sets. One was in Fort Lee and one was in the city. Counsel says, Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Yes. Miss Carroll, what is this here? Oh, that's a CD that I watched, and then I wrote the word Roger on it. Okay, you recognize it? Yeah, perfect. And at some point, did you get remarried, Miss Carroll? What time period? I can't remember anything. 1980s. Oh, 1980s, that marriage. Yeah, John Johnson of ABC. Then he went over to CBS. What year did you get married, Miss Carroll? Important date, right? I mean, how can you forget an anniversary, you know? When did you get married, E. Gene? I don't know. 1987, 1988, give or take. No idea. Then, for 3 years, ending in divorce, but we continued to see each other. Very difficult time remembering almost anything, including her wedding dates. Miss Carroll, are you involved with websites or anything like that? She says, yeah, greatboyfriends.com. The heck is that? Exercise caution, whatever that is. She says, yeah, we've created that with my sister, Candy. Be extra careful. To help people find the one. We started it in 2001. We sold it for $600,000. Nice. I don't use that site anymore. We also created a dating site called Talkaby. And that website uses AI to help people find a good partner. I get 200 letters a month about how to find someone to make them happy. Oh, that's great work. You're an entrepreneur. Neat. Says, well, Miss Carroll, I want to turn finally now to the reason that you're here today. It's about what happened with Donald Trump. She says, I know. Let's talk about it. When did you meet Donald Trump? She says 1987. It was somewhere like SNL or ABC or something like that. Attorney puts a photo on the screen. Says, Miss Carroll, what is this photo here? She says, well, this one is Donald Trump. It's Ivana Trump. It's John Johnson. And she says, that's me over there on the right. It's labeled Confidential Carroll. And it looks like it's from 03, 02, 11, maybe. It's a government exhibit, plaintiff's exhibit 12. What was happening in that photo, Miss Carroll? Oh, gosh, we were taking a photo. The conversation was very, very short, maybe 5 minutes. He was a wreck on tour. Did you find Donald Trump attractive, Miss Carroll? She says, yes, I did. He was a very personable man. Now, fast forwarding, she says, when do you believe Donald Trump assaulted you? She says, well, gosh, it's hard to remember, but going by what I was wearing, since I can't remember years I even got married, I was thinking about what I was wearing, and I was wearing tights but no coat. And so I'd say it was about the spring. She says, Miss Bernabich has written a story. Oh, no, Bernbach, not Bernabich. It was Miss Bernbach, has written a story about Mr. Trump and Mar-a-Lago. It was a bombshell. Objection. Miss Carroll, we're not going to get into the substance of this article, but how did it help you remember when this happened? Carroll says, well, Mr. Tacopina said I refer to 1995 or 1996, and the counsel cuts her off and says, hold on, just stop there. Says, how did the article help you remember? Don't say what's in the article. How did it help you remember? And she says, well, Lisa Bernbach wrote it. Said she went down to Mar-a-Lago in February in 1996. I believe she would not have done that down there if she had known what Trump had done to me. Objection. Judge says, I'm allowing that in, of course. I believe she would not have done down there if she had known what Trump had done to me. And so this is E. Jean Carroll talking about somebody else's state of mind, right? Talking about this woman. I believe she wouldn't have done the thing. She's not qualified to read her mind and testify about her opinion. Objection. Judge says, I'll allow it in because it makes your client look terrible. Carroll continues and says, so all that said, I think it was a Thursday. I can't remember much, but I think it was a Thursday. Now, you've never said that before, have you, Miss Carroll, right? She said, no, I haven't said it. I've always thought it, though. It always felt like a Thursday, how some days just have a feel. I'm not 100% certain, but I think so. I think it was a Thursday. Are you sure, Miss Carroll? I feel sure, but not 100%. She said, I lived in a cottage back then in Nyack. I'd feed the dogs, and then I'd write the TV show, and then I'd drive to Fort Lee and into hair and makeup. I'd be live at 4 p.m. And at Bergdorf, Trump asked me to help him buy a gift. And I loved it. It was a great New York moment. I asked for how old. He came up, hey, what are you doing? Help me buy a gift? Sure, it's weird. You're Trump and I'm me in New York. What a coincidence. So Donald Trump asked her. He says, hey, Carroll, she said, how old are you? What'd you say? I told him I was 52. And he said, wow, you are so old. Man. She said, he was being funny. He wasn't being rude. He was just being funny. What floor were you guys on when he did this? The first floor. Did anyone recognize you? She said, well, there was a shopper. She was tiny, little lady, staring up at him. And he was petting a fur hat, and he said, I know lingerie. Donald Trump's there, patting a fur hat. He says to 52-year-old E. Jean Carroll, I know lingerie. And she says, you mean lingerie like what, underwear? She says, yes. And we went up to the 6th floor after that to take a look at the lingerie. Now, was there anything discomforting that Mr. Trump had proposed about lingerie? Was that discomforting to you? Says, no. I thought it was a great story, in fact. I didn't think it was a big deal at all. In fact, he was talking about buying Bergdorf. Who else did you see? Well, I wasn't looking around. And how did you move? She says, can I stand up here? Counsel asks the judge, Your Honor, may she move? He says, yeah. So she stands up and starts moving around and saying, this is how I was moving. She said there was a blue bodysuit and he picked it up. Trump pulled it off the rack and he said, go put this on. And it was see-through. They used to be called teddies. Was anybody else with you, Gene? I didn't see anyone. Bergdorf's is not busy in the evening, so it was mostly empty. Convenient. Ms. Carroll, have you written before anywhere that you were surprised by this? Well, now I find it surprising. Did you put that teddy on? She said, no, I told Trump, you put it on. It's your color. But he told me back, he said, no, you're in shape. You'll look fabulous. You go put it on. Why in the world would you think that he would want you to put it on? She said, well, I don't know. He was having a good time, I guess, and so was I. And so the door was open and I thought, okay, I saw it as an SNL sketch kind of a thing. So I thought, all right, the doors are open, so I'll just go walk in the dressing room. The doors obviously closed so that people don't go in there and use them. And you have the keys in the dressing room where they go and open the thing and they lock you and they put you in there and they say, how many items do you have? And you say, I got 5 of them. And you go, okay, give you the little card, stuff it in there. So the door was open and she thought, okay, well, the door is wide open, so I'll just go in there. And I just thought it was a sketch. They say, Miss Carroll, were you flirting with Donald Trump? She says, yeah, the whole time I was, the whole time. And what happens next? Donald Trump shut the door and he shoved me against the wall. I was confused, and so I laughed. And I pushed him back and he thrust me against the wall again. Were you still laughing, Miss Carroll? She said, yes, I was. Why? I didn't want to make a scene and I didn't want to make him angry. I know that sounds strange now. And so what did he do next? Well, he held me against the wall. And he pulled down my tights and I didn't want anything else to happen. Did you say no to him? No, I don't recall saying it. I may have said it. Did you scream? She says no. I'm not a screamer. I'm a fighter. Would somebody nearby have heard if you screamed, Miss Carroll? Would somebody nearby have heard this? She said, yes, they would have. What would they have heard? My head hitting. They would have heard me laughing. I was 5'9" then, and I've leveled since. I had on 4-inch heels. I weighed 120 pounds. He weighed about 100 more pounds than me. And his fingers, says it was extremely painful, horrible feeling. And we'll fast forward because this is PG-13. And then there was an insertion at some point. Counsel says, we'll need a moment, Your Honor. Things get tense. She says, I wonder why I walked in there to get in that situation, but I'm proud to say I got out of there. Lawyer says, could you see what Trump was doing with his hand? I couldn't see it. I could only feel the pain. Get ready for the locker room clip. Grab him by the, get ready for the locker room clip. Can you feel it coming? Were you wearing underwear, Miss Carroll? No. To me, tights are underwear. I wouldn't wear 2 pairs of underwear. Says, what happened next? I got out of the store as quickly as we could. Now, we don't have any evidence of DNA material left at the scene. We have a question about DNA residual material at the scene. Do you know, did he leave anything behind when he left the locker room somewhere? Did he forget anything? She says, no, I don't know if he left anything behind at all. Miss Carroll, how did you get out of the store? I walked out. I took the escalator. Were you running or were you walking? I'm guessing I was walking swiftly. Did Mr. Trump come after you? I was never sure if he was behind me, and I rushed out. So we have no underwear and we have no DNA. So she hustles out of the store. Now, how do you feel about your decision to go up to that dressing room today, Miss Carroll? She says it was very stupid. It changed me. I know people have been through a lot worse than this, but it left me unable to ever have a romantic life again. And what did you do? I called my friend, Lisa Birnbach. She wrote a book called The Preppy Handbook. And I thought, if she thinks it's funny, then I didn't do a stupid thing. Why would Lisa think it's funny? I don't know. I hadn't processed it yet. It was just adrenaline running through. Do you now believe any of this was funny? No, she says. No, this was tragic. And I told Lisa, I said, you're not going to believe what just happened. He pulled down my tights. She said, Jean, I don't think that's funny. She says, I must have still been laughing about it. So she asked me, did he insert? And she said, go to the police. You should go to the police. But I didn't. I couldn't go. Why not? I was ashamed. I thought it was my fault. I was flirting with him. I was laughing. I was having a great time. And then what did you do that evening? Then we walked to the garage and drove home. That night, Miss Carroll, was there any signs of physical abuse? Says my head hurt and I felt pain down there. Did you seek any medical attention for any of that? No. And what did you do with the dress? Says I kept it. It was my best dress. I thought I might wear it again. I couldn't believe that it happened to me. Did you keep a journal at this time, Miss Carroll? When I was younger, I wrote about my emotions. And yeah, I did. But after 40, I wrote about hiking and my dog. I'm a very superstitious person. I don't write about bad things. So if I don't write it down, I don't think about it. Weird. So she has a journal that she writes in very regularly, presumably. That was talked about in Discovery. But then there's nothing in there about this ordeal. Weird. After 40, she stopped remembering dates and talking about bad things. What did you do next, Miss Carroll? I went to work. And I thought I knew best. I didn't see a therapist. Of course not. Why? But I told Carol Martin about it. She was an anchor woman at ABC, and I needed a hug. So I told her, I said, hey, Carol, guess what? I had a run-in with Donald Trump at Bergdorf's. And I went and I spoke to her at her house. Who else was there? Her dog. Her dog was there. Cisco. She remembers the dog's name. Carol is open-hearted. Her dog was too. And she told me, do not go to the police. He has 200 lawyers. He'll bury you. And I agreed with her. And we agreed to never talk about it. Saying that when something is painful and it causes pain to talk about it, we just never talked about it again. Miss Carroll, did you speak to anybody else about this? I did talk to Lisa again, but that was many years later. And why did you stay silent for so long? I would never report it. Roger Ailes would have fired me. I was afraid of Donald Trump, that he would retaliate. Women who go through this are looked at like soiled goods. And people say, she should have screamed and stuff. And so I just decided to not talk about it. Did you tell anybody in your family about this? No, I didn't. Why not? We're a very upbeat family. We do not discuss anything that would cause people to feel badly. Talks to her media friends about it, but not her family. The lawyer says, Your Honor, is there a lunch break window? He says, yeah, 2 o'clock. And the jurors leave. And so we have a short break for lunch, and we fast forward through it, and we come back. And Judge Kaplan says, okay, be seated, everybody. Now, where were we here? We're getting back on track. Counsel, where are we at? Says, Judge, I plan to ask Miss Carroll about the harm that occurred to her from this assault. We appreciate that the defense can ask about other possible causes, but there are 2 areas that I want to ask about specifically. And says, we're not going to object if the defense wanted to ask Miss Carroll about another instance of another assault that occurred to Miss Carroll that involved a camp counselor. So there's another allegation from Miss Carroll about a camp counselor, probably in another interesting ordeal. Tacopina says, please read that back to us. There were 2 other assaults, one by a dentist and then another one that involved Les Moonves. And Les Moonves is another American media executive. Wow, very curious. Here's another one. So Les Moonves is, hang on, let me open this one down here. And we'll learn a little bit about this guy while we have it open. Les Moonves. He is an American media executive who is chairman and CEO of CBS. Numerous allegations, been married to TV personality Julie Chen. Series of executive positions, Viacom, many other places. So she's got a claim against this guy and a dentist. And let's see how the tweet thread continues. Says the following. There were 2 other assaults that we want to get into. One is a dentist, one is former CBS guy. Trump's lawyer says, Judge, she said it in a deposition. I have it right here. It's page 174. I'll read it to you. Judge says, please don't read it to me. He looks at it. What line should I look at? He said, to remind me of my most recent root canal, is what this judge says. This judge has an attitude, man. What line should I look at to remind me of my most recent root canal? It's your job to look at this stuff. The lawyer says 8 through 20. Silence as the judge is reading. Oh gosh, gotta read your, argument. He says, okay, so in a nutshell, insofar as the dentist is concerned, why is it relevant? Why do we have to talk about the dentist assaulting her? Why? An alternate explanation or something? He says, yeah, an alternate explanation. So you're going to say that it wasn't what happened with Trump, but it was the dentist? No, we're going to say nothing happened with Trump. Judge says, well, whatever happened with Trump. He says her MO is an accusation without a time frame. This is what she does in all of these cases. She says that Les Moonves also assaulted her on an elevator. He says, where does she say that? He says, it's in the deposition, Judge. Page 162, line 12 through 17, right there. It's our exhibit AA. He says, okay, give me a minute. If you're talking, I can't read. Gosh, this guy's got an attitude. So they sit down. They come back out. Carroll's lawyer, then Michael Ferreira, stands up. And he cites some Ninth Circuit case. But then Trump's lawyer stands up and he says, well, yeah, Judge, but that rule from the Ninth Circuit, that only applies when the witness had not raised the issue herself and opened the door, which has clearly happened here, right? She has written about this. She's had this published in her books. He says, give me a minute, fellas. Hold on a minute. What does the Ninth Circuit say, Mr. Ferreira, that requires the exclusion of this? He says, well, that case excludes evidence of other assaults in certain scenarios. And we think of it of doors. Some doors must be closed, others will be opened. The judge says, except at Bergdorf's. Ferrara says, well played, Your Honor, well played. He's having fun. Some doors will be opened and others will be closed, except at Bergdorf's. So Trump's lawyer says, Your Honor, they want to allow questions about the dentist when she was a child because it invokes sympathy, but not Moonves. And the judge says, okay, well, the R of a child is bad, but the R of a woman is not. I wouldn't want to hang my argument on that, which I don't think is what he was saying at all. I just read a scathing letter in this case, he says the other day. You are carping. I've had enough of it. Your Honor, says Siegel, they've opened the door, so we're permitted to rebut that. Yeah, but you say an incident with Moonves in 1997 also limited romance or sex, he says. And the plaintiff says, well, the reason we came up with the camp counselor is that Judge Kaplan says, forget the camp counselor, all right? Let's stick with what we're talking about. Carroll says X happened and I have consequences. They say there was also Y. How do we deviate this? The plaintiff says, well, Your Honor, we go to Rule 412, and that precludes them from bringing in this allegation. So the judge turns over to Trump's team and he says, okay, well, counselor, is your expert witness going to come in and attribute harm to this Moonves thing? Are they going to say that Moonves caused her the harm, not Trump? Yeah, he intends to. Is it in his report? Yeah, generally it is. He says, all right, well, I'll think about it over lunch. Now, Ferreira jumps in for E. Jean Carroll. He said, Your Honor, Miss Carroll has said her second husband, John Johnson, was also violent to her. Not sexually, but we think the reason they fought must be excluded under Rule 403 because it's too harmful and not helpful. 403, more harmful than it is helpful, more prejudicial than it is probative. If it tips that way, we keep it out of trial. Tacopina says, sorry, Your Honor, that is totally relevant. The fact that her second husband was also violent. He got violent because she called him an ape. And he says, well, that reason's not coming in. I don't care what she called him. It's a subjective, it's unfair, it's prejudicial, and it outrageously outweighs any probative value. To a mixed race jury in New York, it's outrageous in my opinion, he says. Wow, so E. Jean Carroll, John Johnson is presumably an African-American man, and E. Jean Carroll called him an ape, which is completely racist and inappropriate. And so he got upset with her about it. And they want to talk about this in front of a mixed race jury. Now, you can imagine, boy, if this was the Proud Boys on trial or something like that, that evidence would come in immediately. But that evidence is not going to come in. I mean, she's a plaintiff. If she were a J6 defendant, they would use that against her all day. But she's not. She's a plaintiff. And so Trump wants to use one of those statements, and Trump will not be allowed to use it. He says, it's outrageous in my opinion that you're even trying to do it. And Tacopina says, all right, Judge, take it easy. Just calm down. I've got your ruling. I get it. Judge Kaplan says, I know what you're up to. He says, oh, Judge, what are you talking about? I'm trying to defend this case. To not hear the reason for Johnson's violence, it's not fair. If we're going to talk about it, we got to know the reason for it. You're entitled to your opinion, defense, but it's not my opinion. And he stands up to leave. All rise. All right, please be seated. All right, so they break for a lunch, and we fast forward right through it. And they're back. Trump's lawyer says, Your Honor, before we get started, I wanted to bring up something before you bring the jury in. There was a group of men here that Miss Carroll, she claims have mistreated her throughout her life. And I want to talk about them. And he says, well, you can't talk about the group. We'll take it question by question. So Miss Carroll is back on the stand still, and her lawyer is asking her questions. This is the direct exam. Miss Carroll, do you remember that CD disc I showed you that has the name Roger on it? Yeah, I remember it. Your Honor, we offer plaintiff exhibit Carroll's counsel. We'll take it question by, okay. This is Carroll's counsel, so this is plaintiff's exhibit 112. It's a video of Roger Ailes interviewing Donald Trump, Grand Marshal of the Military Parade. Miss Carroll, who is Roger Ailes? He started Fox News. And why do you think you were unable to form a romantic relationship in your life? In short, why didn't anybody ever love me and I never loved them? Why have I lived an eternity in emotional wreckage? In short, because I was raped by Donald Trump. Oh, great. Why did it have that effect? She says, well, I flirted with him and he attacked me. And so going forward, I didn't even look at men. Now, Miss Carroll's counsel says, Eugene, I'm sorry to have to ask you this in front of everybody here today, but have you had sex since then, since this incident? No, not since 1996 when it was involuntary, allegedly. I have a public persona, then a private self that can't admit out loud, and her voice breaks, that there's been any suffering. Counsel says, Your Honor, may I approach? And she gets a box of tissues, man, and brings them all the way up there. Then she takes one. Tissues come out. She says, thank you. She says, I project myself as invincible. I tell my correspondents, you can do it. The private Eugene is not like that. Counsel continues, now, prior to this assault, had there been extended times that you didn't date? No, I love living in New York. I love going out. How old were you? 52. Is there any other reason that you haven't had sex since then? She says, no. 52 is a great age. Have you given interviews? Did you say that there may have been another reason? Tacopina says, specifics, please. Counsel says, do you recall saying that age may have played a role in you not finding a romantic connection? Maybe it's not Trump. Maybe it's age. She goes, I don't know. Shoot, may I see it? Let me ask you a different way. Do you recall ever saying that age may have played a factor? Yeah. Did you ever use dating apps? She says, well, I viewed them as competition since I owned 2 dating apps. But yeah, I tried those too, I admit. Did you find anyone? No. My friends at Esquire set me up with the perfect man, but I made it not work. I have lost out on one of glorious experiences of any human being. Being in love with another human being, cuddling and eating popcorn and cooking dinner and walking the dog. I feel I should be able to overcome it. All because Trump in 1995, in an incident she never reported, never recorded, told a couple 2 people about, maybe, we'll see. Says, your second husband, John Johnson, was there violence with him? The man that she called an ape? Yes, he strangled me 3 times, but it wasn't sexual. I never called the police and I never sued. Weird. Now, how do you get along with him now? Well, we get along fine. And we continued to have sex after our divorce. After that, too? After those 3 strangulations? Never sued. How do you get along now? Fine. In fact, we kept sleeping together after our divorce. Did you sleep with anyone after that? Yeah, William Goldman. It was lovely. William Goldman. She's on the jury in the witness stand. It was lovely. Yeah. Were you ever sexually abused by a camp counselor? Yes, I was. I was 12 years old. He was the waterfront director. He would take me to the dining room and rub my leg in front of the other campers. Objection is overruled. Are there specific things that trigger these feelings? She says, I haven't figured it out. I had to pull over to the side of the road one night after seeing my colleagues, and I don't like to talk about it. Ms. Carroll, how did Donald Trump's presidential aspiration affect your triggers? She said, he was everywhere. I had to get strong. They became less. Have you seen a therapist since? Yes, I saw a doctor named Leslie. What do you think when Donald Trump ran for president? I thought it was terrible. I think he is evil. Why? Because he attacked me. And what about his politics? Well, I don't even know what they are. Well, why didn't you speak up when he ran? My mother was dying in Indiana. And I noticed that as more women came out, his polling numbers went up. Are you involved in politics? I'm a registered Democrat. You ever donated to a candidate? $1,000 to Obama. Who have you voted for? Obama, Clinton, and Biden. And what is your view of Donald Trump? He's vile. So let me show you Plaintiff's Exhibit 120. Can you tell me what this is? She says, that's the most hideous men in New York City walking tour in 2019. Tacopina says something, and he says, judge says, are you talking to me? Sorry, Your Honor. We were trying to resolve something without getting you involved. But a photo is now up. He says, no objection, Your Honor. What was this tour? Carroll says, well, they do the most famous gangsters walking tour, and so I thought, why not hideous men? In 6 blocks of Fifth Avenue, we visited where well-known men mistreated women. Was this man part of your tour? No, he was in front of Trump Tower charging $5 a photo. I gave him $5. You know, he's working hard. How many tours did you do, Carroll? 6. And how much money did you make? Oh, I didn't charge for those. Miss Carroll, are you suing here today to settle a political score? Not political, a personal score. He called me a liar. The judge cuts it off. Now's a good time to take a break. She's about to go psycho mode. So he says, all right, 15-minute break, and they come back. Now, before the jury comes back, he says, all right, the judge has been thinking a lot about this all day. And at the start of this show, we talked about the billionaire funder called Reid Hoffman, who is at spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. If you want to zoom in on this mind map and follow along at home, you can do that at spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. But this is the billionaire that we're waiting on a ruling on. Can Trump and his defense talk about the fact that Reid Hoffman has been funding the litigation for a while? And we know that because of a disclosure that came in from Roberta Kaplan's office to Alina Abba, confirming that the deposition from E. Jean Carroll was not accurate. She said nobody else was paying expenses. Somebody else was. The name is Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman has a background of hating Donald Trump and having maximum level TDS. And this is what instigated, in my opinion, the lawsuit. It was lawfare that's being brought forward by people who want to use the courts and find favorable plaintiffs to go after Donald Trump. Just like you hear other lawyers talking about on the TV commercials. Do you have mesothelioma? Give our office a call. You know, any of those situations, they are trying to find attractive plaintiffs to go after Donald Trump, not to recover money in a settlement, but to take out their political opponents. So the question that we have, can we talk about that guy in trial? Before the jury comes back, Judge Kaplan rules. He says, all right, I've been thinking a lot about this. Now, the litigation funding, anything about Reid Hoffman, it's not coming in. He says, let me say, it went into 1 or 2 answers in the depositions, and he says, I would conclude there was nothing in there as to credibility. If it did go to the credibility of this, then it would be prejudicial, so it's closed. I'm not letting it in. Trump's team loses. Shocker. So then Carroll lawyer comes back out and says, Your Honor, we have a problem here. At 1:58, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted that a billionaire is funding the lawsuit. And in light of Mr. Trump's son's tweet after the Trump social post, we are wondering about what remedy Your Honor wants to impose. It's highly inappropriate for us to have this happening. Judge, what are you going to do about it? The judge says, Trump Jr. posted after I ruled this morning? Mr. Tacopina, what are you going to do about it? He says, you are well aware that remedies to this claim, to this problem, may go beyond those of this court. I suggest you speak to your client. Implying that this court may not have any jurisdiction over Trump Jr., but maybe the Department of Justice will. Tacopina says, Your Honor, look, as to Eric Trump, I'm going to address with the court. The tweet was before your ruling of a few minutes ago. And Reid Hoffman, Eric Trump didn't do anything wrong. He says, just so you're aware, there are relevant U.S. statutes here. See what he's pointing to? Criminal statutes. He's going to say Trump should be prosecuted and make a recommendation over to the DOJ. Say, there is a crime being committed here. I'm trying to run a trial. You're interfering with my jury. He's literally obstruction. Please go prosecute him. And the DOJ will take that and run with it. So this judge is literally warning Trump. There are relevant U.S. statutes here. He says, bring the jury in. Now, again, I don't know if Trump is okay with this. Maybe this is part of a strategy. Maybe he's fine. They can indict him 35 times for all he cares. He doesn't care. If there's a gag order, maybe that escalates this whole thing. Maybe they charge him for this. He said, I have a First Amendment right, free speech. I'm allowed to say whatever I want. Charge him with the crime. We get the Supreme Court involved. I mean, this whole thing could come apart very quickly. Or Trump walks back from the line and we just kind of straddle the line moving forward through this litigation. Or he gets charged with a crime again, a whole new set of crimes. So they bring the jury back in. The jury's entering. Miss Carroll is still on the witness stand. Lawyer for the plaintiff continues. Miss Carroll, what did you say to Lisa Birnbach when Trump won? I said, can you believe it? She said, cuts her off. Did you know what she was thinking? I thought I did. A lot of people told me that I should write a book. I thought many times of writing a book about what women think about men. And then the Harvey Weinstein story broke. And that was about in 2017. I said, Miss Carroll, how do you feel about men? I like them. And so I decided to include Donald Trump in my book. Were you paid in advance for your book? Yeah, I was. $70,000. I wonder how much that money would have been if Donald Trump was not included in the book. Miss Carroll, have you gotten any money since then? No. How did you market it? She said, well, Donald Trump was mentioned in it. That's it. New York Magazine ran an excerpt. It hit the internet 3 days before the hard copy. That was back in June 2019. Why didn't you publish it in Elle? Well, they would not have published it. They would not publish their advice columnist admitting a mistake. Were you paid by the New York Magazine? No, they paid St. Martin's, I think $7,500. And did you send it to Lisa and to Carroll? Yeah, I did. I sent it as an email attachment. Neither of them had a problem with it. They're both writers. Miss Carroll, were you three of you interviewed in June? Yeah. And did it change your recollection of the events? She says, no, but I had known Lisa was feeding her children when she got my call. Okay. So after this was published, Carroll, can you tell me what the response was? Well, I thought that Donald Trump would deny it. You know, he denies everything. Objection sustained. Miss Carroll, I want to show you this tweet. You see this here? Yeah. It says, I never met her. Do you see that? Yeah. Now, I want to also show you this interview in The Hill where Donald Trump says, she's not my type. You recognize that? What do you understand that to mean? She's not my type. What does that mean? That I'm too ugly to attack. I thought he was going to say it was consensual. Then I started getting threats. The letters I got, they turned negative. And the threats, they were bad. What was your reaction when you got them? I deleted them. Oh, good. So we don't have any evidence of those either. Perfect. Did you also get support? Yeah, I did, from all over. But the vileness about my ugliness, it just swamped it out. And her voice is breaking again. And now I'm finally getting my day in court. It is everything to me. I'm so happy. Sobbing. Lawyer says, can we take a minute, Your Honor? She says, I'll get myself together. This is my day in court. I'm not going to cry and waste everyone's time, but I lost 8 million readers. I've still got 19,000 readers on Substack, but Elle magazine fired me after I accused Donald Trump. Were you able to obtain a new job? No. I have a Substack, and for Elle once a month, I got $5,000. Now I churn out 3 a week for the same income. Have you heard of Jessica Leeds? Yeah. I interviewed her about Donald Trump assaulting her on a plane. The press tends to use words like grope. Objection. Judge says, to what? All right, we're going to break here right now. He says the jurors can go home. But first, it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, don't talk about this case. The jury leaves. And the defense says, Your Honor, she said other women had come forward. And Carroll's lawyer says, she's covered a lot today, okay? We aren't trying to import other allegations. The judge says, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Remind me about it tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody. And the judge leaves. Jury is excused. Attorneys are excused, which means we'll be back in tomorrow. And of course, we'll pick it back up from our friend at Inner City Press, Matthew Russell Lee, reporting from the Southern District of New York. And if you haven't already gone and followed him on Twitter at Inner City Press, make sure you do that and make sure you give him some support. In fact, he's got some good, looks like stuff on Amazon, which very well is likely worth a purchase, especially if you're interested in Kevin Spacey or the Ghislaine Maxwell stuff, which we covered a ton about. So shout out to Inner City Press. Thank you for the amazing reporting, our friend. And that is day 2 of the Trump trial, the civil case. And so we did cover some good ground here. If you want to follow along as this mind map continues to evolve, as the trial progresses, we will be back here tomorrow with day 3 of the trial. And you can join us at spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. We saw Trump's tweets are going to be a point of contention, and we're going to see if that leads to new charges. The judge has kept out a lot of important stuff, I think, for the defense, including the funding of this lawsuit and litigation by Reid Hoffman. And we also saw that the judge kept out some conversation about some of her prior comments about exes and things like that. So interesting day. Tomorrow, I'm sure we'll wrap up with the direct exam, and then we'll hear some cross-examination from Joe Tacopina or Chad Siegel on behalf of Donald Trump. And this will very likely be a much shorter trial than anything we saw in the Proud Boys. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about this over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is our amazing community, which is where we will be going for our after party. As soon as we hear from some of these amazing super chats today on YouTube and on Rumble, courtesy of our amazing friends. All right, let's see who is in the house today. We're getting this queued up here. We had a couple. Fred Pedamonte says, how can any conservatives or Republicans get a fair trial in D.C. or the Southern District of New York? Great question, Fred. I think it's going to be a tall order. To be honest, I think it's going to be a tall order. No doubt about it. Voice of the People says, wait, so she hasn't had the thing since the Trump thing? Was she just sleeping with her ex-husband after? She just lied on the stand willingly. You know, I also missed that. Like, I lost track of that. And it's hard because we're getting, a partial transcript, of course. But I thought she said that there was no intercourse. And then maybe there was intercourse. I don't know. I'm actually not that interested in her sex life, to be perfectly clear. So it's kind of hard to dig into it and keep track of it all. And it sounds like a lot of it. I mean, many husbands, doesn't remember much of anything. But all right. So that's what was there. And we'll see what the cross-examination looks like. I'm going to guess it's going to be pretty brutal. But Waldo the Law says not surprised by the judge at all. Yeah, little disappointing indeed. But some of those rulings were not so good. Hey, we also had some member gifts come in at the start of the show. Woo! Who is here? We had Patrick Parker. Patrick Parker, thank you so much for inviting some of our YouTube members to join us. If you join as a member on YouTube, we do morning streams. So we do some member-only extra content 6 days a week, every morning. And we hit some of the other stuff that we can't get to here. We go a little bit, the morning stuff's a little bit wider. We cover more things. Here we go deep. But Patrick Parker brought over C. Fetzer, Lion Dog Pony Face Soldiers coming in. Welcome. We've got Designed Audio, Let's Go Brandon's in the house, Texas Zombie, and others joining us courtesy of Patrick Parker. Thank you, Patrick. And Dolphin Fan is bringing in Rye B, Diane Hunsberger, AM, Are You Kidding is joining us, and Charles R as well. And hey, we got Stephen Mosher. Stephen Mosher sent in another sticker. Thank you, Stephen. This one is a cup of coffee. What a nice cup of coffee from our friend Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. I will certainly enjoy and indulge. And all right, my friends, I think that covers us for all of the amazing donos. Thank you very much for sending those in. I want to say shout out to our friends on Rumble, Indoctrination, NC Native, Nick Danger. We got Tree Tones is over there chatting away on Rumble, and we love our Rumble friends. Let's say hello to Twitter. Now, we are about to wrap it up and go over to our members-only after party at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And if you're a member on YouTube, grab the Telegram link because we have a private Telegram chat as well. And the private Telegram chat is where the show will continue for our YouTube members. Danny McWilliams is on Twitter, says, this has to be a joke. Tell me it's a joke. And Tesla owner says, here, watching Rob on Twitter, the best place to view, no lines for the popcorn. From I Kung Pao, a Tesla owner, and an Asian POC, which I think means person of color, for our friend I Kung Pao on the Twitter. We're happy for our Twitter friends. We love our Twitter friends over on Twitter. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. And so we are going to leave it right there, going over to our members only after party. We'd love for you to join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to debrief some stuff. Don't forget to get your field of greens so you can eat your daily servings of fruits and vegetables every day. Fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert at checkout to save. And of course, there is a mind map that's available. You can check out the Trump mind map at spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. Or if you just want to get an account so you can create your own, check out spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap. It's free. I love this software. I use it for all sorts of stuff, personal development, many other things, including the show. And if you do any content creation, consider it. It's very good. We also want to thank the mods who mod down the fort for us, our friends Vientikis Prime, K-Bean, Just Cause, Playin' Hooky, Arani Cole, Zulu, Geomancy, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janak, Dog Digger, and Donut Mind Me, along with Sleepy Dog Lee and Geegum Geegum, our meme smiths extraordinaire. We appreciate everybody who helps keep the train on the tracks on the program, but we are done. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party. I would love to see you there. But if not, hey, Curtis Bartle came here at the last minute, says, thanks, Robs and mods. Thanks to the Rob and the mods, courtesy of Curtis Bartle. Thank you, Curtis. Member for 9 months. Woo, baby. It's been a long time, Curtis. We're glad that you're joining us this entire time. But we are done for the day. We are going over to our after party. We'd love to see you, but if not, we will be back here tomorrow to do this all again. It's going to be day 3. We'll see some good cross-examination from E.G. and Carroll. I'm sure of it. Until then, my friends, I hope you make it a beautiful night, and I look forward to seeing you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a beautiful evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.